Hello viewers, welcome back. Today we are starting our new chapter in our Excel Fundamental Quick Start Guide course. And what we are looking at today is we are looking at the advanced financial setup. And within our advanced financial setup, we are going to look at things like freezing pane. We are going to look at creating sections. We are going to look at naming cells. We are also going to look at some other calculations like the EBITDA. We look at setting the EBITDA limits, conditional formatting, dynamic labels. We also look at some advanced features like common sized income statements. We shall also be able to look at the percentage change. We see how we can be able to set those percentage changes. We create a navigation column, and at the same time we look at formatting, conditional formatting, and finally we shall look at other log grouping and formula auditing, plus these other print settings, as we shall look at in the due course. So what we are going to look at now is we are going to start with freezing pane. That's something that we want to focus on for now. So, but now you may have to remember that when we were looking at the initial tour of our Excel ribbon, you remember that we discussed freezing panes. And just to review, maybe we do some review of that freezing pane. We can just do a quick review. So what we do, we would go up to the view section of the ribbon. When we go to the view section of the ribbon, up here, that is the view section of the ribbon. Let me first remove this because I had collapsed this. The view section of the ribbon, I had collapsed that ribbon. So let me try to remove the collapse. So we can now be able to see the view section of the ribbon. So from the view section of the ribbon, we have options over here to freeze pane. Here, this is where we have freeze pane. So we could freeze the top arrow, sorry, the top row. We could also freeze the first column, or we could also use this section right here for freeze pane to have a more advanced or a more control over what can be frozen. So let's discuss the options and show you exactly how we can put that to our financial models, or how we can have that operating. So, but for now, those are the three options that we have under freeze pane from our view section of the ribbon. So let's back out that. Now let's first experiment a little bit with the mouse, because I don't want us to go straight to using the keyboard shortcuts before we actually look at the other way of using the mouse. We see how best can we do some of the things. So let's first do an experiment, but when we are using the mouse, and we shall learn how to do the same thing using the keyboard. So if we went up in this area here for freeze pen. It is from the view section of the ribbon. So now from these three options, we can maybe decide that we are going to, select this option right here, freeze top row. And if you click on that option right there, you'll find that the top row has been frozen. But what that effectively does, if you scroll down here, because we have frozen the top row, so if you try to scroll down here using the mouse, hope you have been able to notice the difference. We are scrolling downwards. Now let's try to scroll upwards. When we scroll again downwards, let's go back. Now, when you try to scroll downwards, we are going to see that we always have that top row. This is the top row. That top row, which is having the company logo, it's not moving. It's in the same place, meaning the top row has been frozen or has been fixed to one place. So now what we can do, we can go back up here from the view section of the ribbon. We go back to freeze pen and we try to unfreeze the pen. So we try to remove the frozen top row. That's why we are seeing when we remove it, that company name is going to disappear as we scroll down. So hope you've been able to notice that difference. So now let's try to have the other third section of freezing pen. Let's try to freeze the first column. So we go to freeze pens. We now want to freeze the first column. So we hit the first column. It's the one that we want to freeze. So if we freeze the first column right there, because this is our first column, this is column A, that is our first column. If we click the freeze first column, we can see that now column A has been frozen. So if we want to use, if we use the arrows, this time around we may not use the mouse. If you use the arrows moving all the way to this side, you will see that that column A is still there. When you try to go back like this, because this is A, this is R, this is column R, but this is column A, which means that our column A has been fixed to that same point. That's why you are seeing, even when you are coming backwards, that column A is there. It has been frozen. So that's the second section of freezing pen. Now, let's try and back out, and we get out of freezing this first column. We can go to freeze pen and we unfreeze our pens. So now we can see if we use the arrows, we are seeing even that column A is disappearing, which is not the case when we are frozen that first column. So hope you've been able to see the difference between those two sections that we've just looked at. So now what we want to do, we want now to explore what we can do, but this time around we are going to be using the keyboard. As far as freezing the pen is concerned, we are going to basically focus on the use of the keyboard. That's what we've been doing when you are using the mouse. So now, one of the things that we always do when we are using this functionality of freezing pen is, if you look up here, if you go to our freeze pen And when you look up here, we have those different options. But most of the times, when we are using that functionality of freezing pane, we almost never use freeze the top row. Neither do we use the freeze first column. What we always use is that we always use this first option, freeze panes. And that option right there of freezing pane, we use it because it gives us the most control. In other words, it can help us to customize our frozen areas. So maybe we try to, because when this option gives you a most control of what can be frozen, what do we mean by that? Because we want to explain exactly what we mean from this perspective. Let's pretend for a moment that we want maybe to freeze the first row. In other words, when you are freezing this first row here, the whole idea is that we want to make sure that the company logos, the company name, they are always there. In other words, we always want to see these company logos and the company names. But now, let's also just assume that we are also going to freeze the first. We are not going to freeze the first column, because now the other practical bit of it that we are trying to look at, we are just making an assumption that we want to make sure that the first row is frozen, and at the same time we want also to make sure that we see everything here in this point here. Maybe let's try to highlight, we are seeing everything from this perspective all the way to this section here, maybe up to there, and we are seeing all of that information. In other words, we can actually push up to E, meaning we want to be seeing the company logos, and at the same time we want to be seeing those 5 columns from A to column, from column A to column E. We want to be seeing all those columns. In other words, we want to make sure that those parts are frozen and they are fixed in one place, and we can be able to see them at the same time. So in order for us to have that in control, or to have that in place, we have to make sure that we use freeze pane, but we don't necessarily use the other two options that we have. So we use this option right here from this freeze pane, the first option, because that one is the only option that will allow us to have those two selection being pinned or fixed in one place. So what we would do in this case, if we want to have those two things in place, we would put the cursor in this cell, F2, this one, because in this area, remember, we want the whole of this item, we want the whole of this section, and at the same time we want also the whole of that. So the implication is that this meeting point here, they are meeting at a cell. This line of column A is meeting this row at this point. So it is this, we are taking the cell that is forming the intersection of those two figures, and they are meeting at this place. This is cell F2. So that's where we are going to put our cursor, because we want all those two things to be reflecting there. So we put our cursor at that point in cell F2. And if we do what we could do, we could as well, what we are going to do now, let's try to do a quick demonstration. We see how best can we demonstrate that, so that we have that in place and we can see the rest of the things being fixed. So with our cursor in that cell F2, what we want to look at, these four corners of this cell. This is the first corner, this is the second corner, the third, and this is the fourth. But now, where we want to focus, in other words, the point, we are saying that this top right, top left corner, where we are pointing here, is the point that is going to be frozen. In other words, right there is where we are always going to see that frozen point. So what we are going to do now is, when you have that cursor in there in F2, let's move and now do what we call freezing the pen. So what we are going to do, we tap the Alt key, and that Alt key displays those different letters that you are seeing. And we know that freezing pen is within the view section of the ribbon. So after pressing the Alt key, we are going to go for W4, because this W is the one that represents the view section of the ribbon. So after going to the view section, we can also see that over here, F is representing, over here, this F is representing freeze pen. So we type F, and then we can also see that from this position here, we have another F for freeze pen. So we are going to tap F again. Now, we can see that our sections have been now frozen. We are saying that those two things have been frozen, and now we are seeing that that top left corner right here, this top left corner here is the point where we are seeing the frozen part being activated. So let's try to test what we've just done, and we see whether what we have discussed is actually what is happening. So we are going to use the right arrow. Let's try to use the right arrow to go all the way to this point. Maybe when you go out there, we are trying to go all the way to that point. We are seeing that column from A to E is fixed in one place. It's not moving. You are seeing it's not moving. So that means those 5 columns A to E are all frozen in one point. In other words, whenever you are moving this information, you can actually be able to see those columns being fixed to that point. In other words, they are within that same location. Now, that's what we wanted to have in place, and we've seen it has worked well. But now, if we try to go downwards from that same cell, we move downwards. When you move downwards using the down arrow, we can see what I want you to see is that we are seeing that top row is not moving, it is fixed. And that's what we wanted to have in place, because we are seeing that company logo and everything, they are not They are not moving anywhere. So that's what we wanted to achieve. So that's basically what we exactly wanted to be frozen. So we've been able to freeze exactly what we wanted in a customized way at that exact location that we've discussed. And remember, the key shortcut, in other words, the keyboard shortcut that we used to get there was Alt, W, F, and F. And we've seen it's a very great shortcut because it has helped us to have that in place. But what makes it so great is that it is that same shortcut, keyboard shortcut, that we are going to use to unfreeze the pens. So let's try it now and tap the Alt key. Alt key. We go for W, we type W for view, and then we can see right up here F for freeze pens, and at the same time F again to unfreeze the pens. So we are seeing there now, okay, we can now move, we can move like that. Even this point we can see that those things are actually moving. So that's what we basically wanted to look at in that perspective. Hope you've been able to get the difference and to get how some of those things are done. So the reason why we always use Alt WFF for freezing pen is that it gives you any flexibility that you want to freeze the pen. Absolutely, because now you are going to focus at anywhere, at any point within your spreadsheet, you can freeze it. That kind of flexibility is what makes the freeze pen most favorable, or the most preferred mode of control. So that's basically what we wanted to get from that point. Now let's suppose we only wanted to freeze across here, the top row, this top row alone. Well, we would now position the cursor over here at this cell A2, because if the idea is that we don't want to freeze the top row or the column row, the first column, and we want to use the shortcut. Using the keyboard will require you to hold your cursor in cell A2. That is the cell before, it is the cell after that row 1 that we want to have frozen. So after positioning your cursor in that cell A2, now we are going to go to Alt, W for view, F for freeze pen, and then F again. And it's frozen. We are seeing that this top right corner here of that cell has been frozen. So if you try to scroll down using the down arrow, you will see that that first row is frozen, but none of the columns are frozen at all. So if you try to go this side, you will find that those columns are not frozen at all. So that's what we wanted to understand from that perspective. So that's actually what we are looking for in this particular case within the model. So now that we have our first row frozen, we are going to go ahead and start building downwards to build more analysis into our worksheet here. So we need to add on some more additional things that we need to look at. And as well, we want to do more analysis, and we are going to always see those nice logos and company name across on the top. Because if we proceed doing our work down below the income statement, we will be able to see all the information that is relating to our company in the question. So we are saying that KC Accountants Education Center is visible because it has been frozen to be there as we are progressing within our financial model. So, but now there is something I want us also to learn, because there is a situation whereby our model is, instead of ending at this year 2028, maybe let's assume that our model was actually stretching up to this point. Remember, if it is stretching up to this point S, you find that there is some information that we are not seeing from this point. And even when you go to this side, there is some information that you are not going to be seeing from that R or from that S column. Even when you try to see the information that is in the S column, you will not be able to see some of the things that are belonging to A column. So what do we mean from that perspective? For example, what now we are seeing from this point is that the information has crossed our screens and we can't see that information. If we try to see the whole of the information, we need to first zoom in to reduce the zoom levels so that we can be able to see the whole information. But now, if we don't want to zoom so that we can zoom in so that we can actually be able to see the whole of the information, one of the things that we need to do is to make sure that we freeze the first column, because we may need to freeze the first column as well so that we can be able to see all the information in the different periods. But now for our case here, with our forecast period, we are seeing that we have a forecast period of only 5 years. And we are seeing that this doesn't need for us to have the first column frozen. We can actually be able to see some of these things. So what we only need to freeze, we need to have only one row frozen so that we can be able to have that company information displayed. So now that we have that top row frozen and we've learned a new keyboard shortcut, let's move ahead to the next lesson and we will continue to build down this financial model in the spreadsheet to get more financial analysis and also having some additional information to our financial model. So we'll see you in the next video.